Welcome back to the Green Witch Homestead.
If you caught my garden tour video, that you saw me talking a little bit about how we are trying corn this year and how we grew it. We're going to actually delve completely into the traditional Native American indigenous people's method of the Three Sisters garden. The majority of people are aware of what a Three Sisters garden is, but traditionally the Three Sisters garden comes from the Iroquois nations, and I believe mostly from Seneca. I do apologize if I'm mispronouncing that. But it is believed that these plants, sustainers of both physical and spiritual life, were a gift to the Iroquois people as they sprouted up from the body of the Sky Woman's daughter when she fell. We're going to delve into the more agricultural purposes as to why these plants worked together so beautifully and still in nowadays gardens are an amazing crop to grow all three together. They are staple crops here in North America. They are all storable crops, and they are all three a great blessing to have on the homestead. What most people don't realize, and why a lot of people kind of try and fail at the Three Sisters garden, is it's a specific type of each. Because if you think about it, the Three Sisters garden is to provide food for a family or a tribe throughout the winter when you can't grow. Each of those crops require a large amount of crop to last or to be a useful harvest. They take up so much space. Being able to grow three things in the same space, you're able to provide more food for your family. You have to really watch and pay attention to which ones you're using in the Three Sisters garden. If you're growing a bean that most people know, which is like a green bean, some type of bean that you snap and eat fresh or cook as the entire pod, that's the wrong kind of bean. They're far too dense and they just take up too much nutrients out of the soil. So they're actually going to be more of a detriment than an aid in this combination. So one of the beans that you want to look for is some type of vining bean that grows long and spindly and puts off these big beautiful pods, but they're not one that you eat fresh. They are a bean that you leave to let dry and then you harvest and shell them. The beans that we're going to use, we actually picked up at Baker's Creek Seed Festival. These are actually the traditional succotash beans. These beans literally were the ones that were grown by the indigenous people in the Three Sisters garden. Corn, you can do it with the sweet corn that most people are used to growing, but in truth you really want to use a dent corn or a field corn, one that you again let the corn grow, let it dry, and then harvest and store the dried kernels on the cob. So the corn that I used in my Three Sisters garden is a field corn or a dent corn. The third and final one in the Three Sisters garden is your squash. And again, we're looking at long-term storage here. So you're not going to want to be using a soft skinned summer squash like zucchini or crookneck or patty pan. You want one that is going to be a winter squash because you're going to let it grow, you're going to let it ramble, and you're going to leave it out there until the first kiss of frost hardens the outside layer of those squash so you can store them all winter long. The squash that we are using in our garden is the butternut squash. I did, however, just for the fun of it, throw in one of these bad boys right on one corner. It is a Desert King watermelon. It's an orange flesh watermelon. So let's go take a look at the Three Sisters garden and how I have everything laid out. So over here is our Three Sisters garden. And if you remember in the garden tour, I did show you how I had the corn planted in. So we do have our rows that are in a block formation, and that's very important when you're growing corn because corn is pollinated by the wind. So you can't just have one long row of corn, you need to have several rows so that they will pollinate each other and you'll get a better harvest. A very important thing to remember when doing the Three Sisters garden is timing, because your beans are going to be one of the fastest growers in the garden and you want the corn to be able to support your beans. So your corn is the first thing that should go into your garden. The general rule of thumb is once your corn is about a foot tall, then you can go ahead and direct sow your beans into the garden. That's going to give your corn enough time to bulk up before the beans are taking it over. If the beans go in too soon, they could actually get too big and too heavy and your corn plants will stunt because they can't support the growth. Ours here almost tripled in size since I planted them just last week, and they are just reaching that 1 foot mark. So we went ahead and direct seeded our succotash beans a couple days ago,
And as you can see, they're just now coming up out of the ground. We also have our butternut squashes in. You want to make sure that you give your squash a lot of space because it is a rambler. That's why you choose a winter squash, and that's very important to have in your Three Sisters garden. That squash spreading out over the ground is not only going to help with weed suppression, but the prickly leaves on the squash are actually going to help deter pests like raccoons and rabbits and squirrels from eating your beans and corn. So we've got one squash here, and then what I've done is I've planted them 8 feet apart in each row. So there's another squash over there and then a third one down at the end. But then I've alternated. So in this row, you've got a squash here, there, and here. So we have approximately 12 squash in this space, and that will be more than enough to completely cover this. Once the squash have taken over this bed, it's gonna look really neat. Another thing to keep in mind is your light source. All of these plants are very heavy feeders. They require full sun, and you can clearly see we have a small issue here in our Three Sisters garden because I have this one plant that kind of overgrew on our fence line and is shading out half of the garden. I've already started to notice a marked difference between the squash and the corn that are growing the part that is shaded until about 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning versus the side that gets sun. So this only been a week, and to notice a difference already, that's a very important thing. It's always things that you want to look for when you're in your garden. When you're growing something, watch it. Look at how they respond to different light sources, stuff like that. It'll really help you to make sure that you have a healthy, happy garden. So our project this weekend is to chop that bad boy down because I really want this garden to be successful. And unfortunately, that means I cannot have a shady spot like that. One of the neatest things about this combination of plants is how that they actually help each other out. Very much like three sisters holding each other's hands and supporting each other through their different phases of life. The corn provides structure and stability for the otherwise flimsy bean vine. The bean, in turn, provides a boost of nitrogen that helps feed the corn through the season to get a better yield and harvest. And the squash sister has laid down her protective leaves to keep other pests and plants away from the corn and the beans so that they can all three grow happy and healthy together. And it's really an amazing and beautiful thing to see. Personally, I'm extremely excited to watch my garden grow and to share that with you through the season, to see how these three actually work together and if that's going to help improve our corn harvest for the year. Corn is a delicate crop, and it is one that we have struggled with here on our property. This method should vastly improve our yield, not just with our corn crop, but with our beans as well. If you've ever tried a Three Sisters garden before and you didn't like the results, or they just kind of failed, I hope that these tips have really encouraged you and inspired you to give it a try this season. In truth, this is really a beautiful and amazing feat of nature to see how these plants grow and benefit each other, and I highly recommend that everybody gives it a try in their vegetable garden. If you tried a Three Sisters garden before, let me know down in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm glad that we're back. Give us a thumbs up and leave a comment down below to help the algorithm pick us back up and get us out there. I'm happy that you came into my garden to enjoy this walk with me and get your hands dirty.